June 14th, 2016. Guys, you're looking at the USGS earthquake map from today. I've got it set at magnitude 2.5 plus. I want to point out that we've had another Yellowstone quake. This one's 52 kilometers west of West Yellowstone in Montana at 9.7 kilometers deep. That's not that deep, but if you have a strong one at that depth, you're going to have more surface damage. The deeper one, you'll see a wider spread area that's felt, but these shallow quakes can be damaging. But it could be magma movement, it could be a fault zone movement, but usually you will have a large swarm after the initial quake if there's magma movement. And guys, in the video I did a couple of days ago about Cascadia and Yellowstone, we looked at the swarm of quakes, which is still occurring now. It's not as intense, but look to your left there, and that's today. And it started with the 5.2 down off Borrego Springs, California. Remember that quake? A lot of people felt it. And you're looking at what's called the Saltine Valley or the Saltine Fault area that comes out of the top of the Gulf of California, guys, down into Mexico. And this rift, this valley that you're seeing where the Salton Sea is part of that. And and the geologists say it's the point where California is actually splitting apart. Again, you look down at the Gulf of California. But the Salton Sea, guys, is not a natural sea there. Back in, I think it was 1905, the canal dam broke for the Colorado River, and that water ran down there and formed the Salton Sea. But this swarm of quakes, it stuck in the back of my mind that we talked about the other night. And if you look at it, guys, at the south tip, the bottom of the Salton Sea, and you see the red line, the part of the San Andreas Fault, actually, and that's the split point. But at the bottom of the Salton Sea, there are 5 volcanoes. And if you go back into the articles, I'll link to this one. It's called the Salton Buttes, 5 volcanoes at the Salton's Lake southern tip. Last erupted between 940 and 0 BC. Not 30,000 years ago as previously thought, so between 2,000 and 3,000 years ago. And that's young on a timeline as far as volcanoes and things like that. But these swarms, they'll create a region-wide rotten egg smell, and it recently happened before this, and it reminded Southern California residents that they live next to an active volcano field. It says at the time, scientists said the phenomena did not reflect changes in the magma chamber below the Salton Sea. Guys, what we just saw was the 5.2, and it created an opening fissure. It was pressure building up, and as that swarm of over 1,000 quakes moved north, the magma was pushing through that area. So that southern tip of the Salton Sea with the 5 volcanic mud volcanoes that they have there, and there's a geothermal plant and things like that right beside it, that has moved north. I don't know if it left the area or simply expanded. It would be easy to note by the output of those geothermal plants there that are on the south tip. But they're talking about if another eruption occurs at the Salton Buttes, it will likely mimic past eruptions. And what they're not talking about a super volcano, but enough ash in the air, guys, that it would disrupt a lot of things. It would cool down things. It may not be a worldwide event or anything like that, but like LAX airport, places like that, guys, would definitely be affected, and the air quality would definitely be affected on something like this. But what we're seeing is, and it may be a lead-in for geologists as far as history, is that as we see this magma field leave the southern tip of the Salton Sea and move north up the San Andreas Fault, could that have been a predecessor of over the millions of years that has split the peninsula that we call the Gulf of California, that leads up as it hits the land, it becomes the San Andreas Fault, part of the Ring of Fire? Very well could be. It's always good to look at patterns like that. But guys, we definitely, when you have that many swarms, that's the only thing that it could be. And Caltech has been studying this, and it's called the Salton Seismic Imaging Project. And what they've done, they went in and analyzed a lot of earthquakes. And what will happen is, just like if you're studying or looking for oil, they will maybe plant dynamite or explosions underground, and as they will read the shock wave pattern, it will react differently with rock, water, lava, soft rock, hard rock, things like that. And it gave them a map of what's the bottom of the North American plate. They did it worldwide. They never had a good picture. But in this area, they noticed that there were mountain ridges, and it was inverted mountain ridges, in other words, like upside down, of these rock formations. In other words, instead of a steady section down to the extreme depths, all the way to the lithosphere, that the Earth's outer shell changed drastically. And you can see on this map, going from the reds to the blues, how fast it would happen. So say you had an area underground where the protective shell rose very quickly. That's one thing they look for when they're looking for oil, because it will rise to the highest point. So will magma. So if you've got a very sharp grade as far as an incline, then that magma would naturally move faster, possibly what we're looking at there. But you've got underneath that, it's called the asthenosphere, a hotter, more pliable layer of rock. In other words, it's not as hard as the lithosphere. And so it's because it's hotter, more pliable. This is one of the things that breaks down into magma, and it gives you your earthquakes. But it says the lithosphere, or the asthenosphere question, was dubbed one of seismology's top 10 grand challenges on the national science list that the U.S. researchers assembled a few years back. And guys, this research has been going on for about 3 years into this project. But he said the study revealed surprising structures. He said that thanks to the new methods, and that's what we're talking about. In other words, when these earthquakes send a shock wave through the planet, guys, they can read what is underneath us, because the waves will react one way to hard rock, one way to soft rock, and one way to water. And one of the things they found was that there's an ocean under China that's as big as the Arctic Sea. That's amazing, isn't it? You think about that, and you think about the biblical perspective of the ground opening up and floods, things like that. But that's not the only place. But the largest underground ocean that they found now is centered under Beijing. That's amazing to think about it. But it's as large as the Arctic Sea. And through this technology, the sounding effect of watching the waves bounce actually from the earthquakes, they can determine, again, exactly how the design of the lithosphere and the asthenosphere is set up. Now, of course, the people that are looking for oil will have taken advantage of this technology. But the way they found these things, they used 600,000 seismograms from around the world. The waves generated by the earthquakes traveling through the earth collected from instruments scattered around the planet. And this is where they caught the water. It said they noticed a region beneath Asia where seismic waves appeared to dampen or attenuate and also slow down. Water slows the speed of waves, and this is the scientists are saying lots of dampening and a slowing match predict the water. And that's where they found these vast underground oceans. So again, amazing technology. Not trying to veer off from the subject of this magma movement moving north on the San Andreas Fault, but that's a video in itself about these vast underground oceans. So I guess to wrap it up, guys, we need to watch for continuing swarms in that area. We don't know the period between active and inactive times, but there had to be a reason for over 1,000 earthquakes in that area, and it's still occurring, telling me that we're still having some type of magma movement north. But just trying to look at the reasons behind this, guys. But if you look at this map, you can see this area is between these two fault zones, and it goes up and right into Desert Hot Springs, into that area, Palm Springs, moving northward along that line. As we see these changes in the earth, and we see the different changes in the sun and the effects that we see from there, and that we're going into a solar minimum, how is this affecting this plate? Does that have something to do with it? Guys, we're going to be watching it. Keep an eye on the progression of that swarm of quakes. That would indicate the magma movement. But I think that's what we're seeing, and we'll be watching it, guys. Heads up, be safe.